side of the housing element update. Tricia?
I'm Tricia Isom. I'm the housing manager with the Housing Division and the executive director of the Housing Authority as well.
And I'm Gina McCall with the Planning Division here at the City of Roseville, just assisting today.
So, and Gina will be keeping an eye on the chat. So speaking of which, we have been using the chat function for folks to offer comments and ask questions. Gina monitors and moderates that chat, makes sure to keep track of who's asked what, and is sort of reading off the questions for everybody's benefit. Hopefully you all know how to access the chat, but I will briefly describe that. If you are on like a computer as opposed to a mobile device, you will either take your mouse toward the bottom, the lower part of the screen, and the options will pop up, and one of them will be like a little text bubble icon. If you click on that, the chat will open. And the other option is, it may be, if you have a newer version of Teams, it may be permanently affixed as a top bar on your screen. And again, you'll see that little chat icon. If you're on a mobile device, the icons will appear if you tap on the screen, usually the lower portion. So hopefully everybody knows how to use that. If you don't and are struggling with that, you can raise your hand and I can potentially share my screen and show you where those functions are. So yeah, we're going to be asking you to use the chat this afternoon, and we really appreciate you coming. This is a much more informal community meeting. If it were happening in person, which we really wish we could do, but if it were happening in person, there would be a room with some boards around the room and people standing by the boards for you to interact with and ask your questions of. We did a long formal presentation last week that was recorded and is posted on the Housing Element Update website if you want to get a bunch of information and background. But briefly, what we're looking for with these community meetings now is to get input from y'all on the policies, the programs, and the strategies we're looking at. So the existing policies and programs in the housing element describe efforts the city will go to accommodate housing in the city, pursue equitable housing, fair housing, things like that. And then the strategies I'm talking about is, hopefully you're all aware that each jurisdiction gets allocated a certain number of units that our plan areas have to show we can accommodate in the 8-year planning period of the housing element. Now, the units we've been allocated, and all other jurisdictions have been allocated this cycle, are much higher than they have been previously. So we're operating under a deficit right now. And we need to find up to 3,000 more units, or land for, I should say, 3,000 more units. And so we've got a couple of different proposed strategies, some of which focus on infill, some of which focus on the developing areas of the city in the West Plan areas. And so what we'd like to know from you is whether or not you think there are any policy modifications or program modifications we should make, what your opinions are on those strategies and where we should focus our attention for getting some of those units, and any other comments and questions you have. So I think that covers it, unless Tricia, you have anything to add. So at this point, if you have comments or questions, we'd love for you to start inputting those into the chat so that we can address those for you. I'm not seeing anything come into the chat. So can folks let me know, in that case, what were you hoping to hear from us or get from us during this meeting time in that case? Because if nobody has any comments or questions at this time, then I would love to just know what you might want to hear from us right now. Or raise your hand if you, here we go. Oh, you're muted.
First comment we have here. Here at PIRS, we serve individuals with disabilities. We really encourage the construction of accessible units.
Tricia, do you have any? We do have policies and programs in the housing element. that address this. Tricia, can you speak to that somewhat? Or is that one we can get back to somebody on?
I think that's something that we can get back to someone on. You know, we don't have any requirements for accessible units. There aren't any very specific percentages or anything like that. But we do have a listing of all of our accessible units throughout Roseville and all of the apartment communities where we have affordable units. So that is something that people can access. So when we do find out that there are new accessible units, we put that on the list. But again, we don't have actual programs to provide or to require accessible units.
Yeah, and the existing housing element is on the housing element update website under the documents tab. So I would recommend that you look at some of those programs. And if you are concerned about providing better access to affordable housing to people with different disabilities, we would love to hear any recommendations you have in terms of how we could modify our policies or programs to better support that.
Okay, we have a question from Carol. Are there grants available to assist with down payment on home and condos?
So we do have programs for down payments on affordable homes throughout Roseville. Unfortunately, they are not grants. They are loans. So we do have an affordable purchase program, and we have we have a new one coming online here soon. But what happens is there are homes that are for sale and there's a market price, and we determine what an affordable buyer can afford. So someone making approximately 80 to 100% of the area median income. And then there's a first mortgage based on the amount that the affordable buyer can afford. And then there is a silent second mortgage that ends up being the nexus between what they can afford and the market price. So you only pay that first mortgage, again, based on what you can afford. The silent second mortgage is paid back either in 30 years or when you go to sell the home. So hopefully that's helpful. If you want more information on that, you can go to our website or you can email me directly, and maybe we can put our emails in the chat so people can email us for more information on that kind of stuff. I'll stick my email in there right now.
Okay, Tricia, a continuation also. What about, can you speak a little bit about medium income for Roseville?
What's the area median income?
Yeah, so the area median income is based on our area. So Plaza County, Sacramento has an area median income. It's based on the income of our jurisdiction. So right now, 100% of the area median income, so the average, is $86,300, I believe, and that's for a family of 4. So when we're looking at someone making 100% of the area median income right now for 2020, it's $86,300. So that is what we consider middle or moderate income. Someone having low income would make 80% of that. Please don't ask me to do that math right now in my head. I don't have that number memorized. Someone who is very low income would be 50% of the area median income, which that would be about $42,000, something like that. Again, for a 4-person household. All of that information is on our website as well. I would gladly take any further clarifying questions on that. I know it's kind of confusing.
And Will Taylor, because I see you have your hand up for a little bit. Are you having trouble accessing the chat? You can unmute.
I was just thinking it might be easier to ask the questions rather than type them in.
Is it a long one?
Just in general.
So one of the reasons we're using the chat is because then we have a record of all of the questions exactly as they were asked that we can carry forward as we're moving into the edit portion. And the other thing is that as the group gets bigger, this group is fairly small, so we can maybe go ahead and let people chat after you've been called on. But we also, I mean, even in staff meetings, sometimes you can, because since you're not all physically in the same room, you can end up having crosstalk and it gets a little confusing. So the chat's sort of a clean way to go through that. But if you are having trouble using the chat, or it's a very long question and you think it would be easier to verbalize, I think this is a small enough group that that could be okay.
Okay. I was wondering what your logic was behind that. Basically, we serve individuals with disabilities, and we're always looking for safe, accessible, affordable housing and the construction of that. That might be something you want to include in the housing element, to actually include a requirement of maybe 1% build out of the 10% affordable units being accessible. As we see the population aging, people are going to want to age in place, and there's a real need for accessible, wheelchair accessible housing. So I'd encourage you to really look at that as an opportunity for meeting your constituents' needs.
Okay, yeah. And like I said, if you want to look at the existing programs and policies we have in there, so I hear that you're recommending that we come up with a percentage of the affordable that we require that would need to be accessible. So that's the recommendation I hear you saying right now.
Well, ideally they'd all be accessible, but but a percentage would be a good start. That's all for now. Thanks.
Oh, I like that. Thank you for your comment, Will, because even at some of our senior apartment communities where people are aging in place, obviously there's still not a lot of accessible units. So I completely understand where you're coming from. But that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have another comment. It's from Rebecca, and she states, I am with Plaza YIMBY, and we advocate for affordable housing in the region. What steps are you taking to build more missing middle housing in Roseville?
So if I could ask a clarifying question for the chat, what you mean when you say missing middle housing? Because people do have some different ideas about what they're imagining when it comes to missing middle housing. What I can say is we actually have a lot of what we call medium density residential land designations, and what that density, and that's 8 to 12 units to the acre, that sort of middle density ground. And you're allowed to come up with your own development standards, and that's where you can do cluster housing and row housing and townhomes and all of that other sort of product that spans the divide between standard multifamily housing, standard single-family, detached single-family housing. So we have a lot of land capacity for those sort of different middle types of units. The trouble is that we don't build housing, and a lot of times the product that developers come forward with on those medium density sites is, it's the courtyard development, so it's small lot detached single family housing. We just don't see a lot of proposals. I think in the last couple of years we've had one proposal for, gosh, I can't remember how many units it was. It was a small infill site and they were duplexes. I think they're starting construction now. So we just don't see a lot of developers proposing that. And certainly I think part of that is a market issue, because when we did our last flash vote survey, asking folks what kind of housing they think that we need, or what kind of housing separately, what kind of housing they want. A lot of folks saying they want single family, the majority saying they want standard single family. And the same thing with the type of housing they think we need is standard single family. So we have all of the land use in place and the ability for flexible development standards in place for that sort of missing middle, the thing you're thinking about. We just don't see a lot of proposals for that. If you have any suggestions for what we could do to incentivize that kind of, I'd be happy to hear that. So do we have anything else in the chat at this point?
Yes, Barbara did ask about, or she clarified that, yes, she was talking about multi-unit housing like duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, etc., and bungalows, things of that nature. And then Will Taylor also had an additional comment. He said, your presentation last week provided great information, particularly the video on tax credits. You've worked with Mercy Housing to build multi-unit housing.
Yeah. And I don't know, Tricia, if you want to talk about that at least a little bit, the Mercy Housing project.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, the Mercy Housing project, it's actually called Losi Apartments, and it's at 623 Vernon Street. That's there's a little bit more information on our housing element update website. We mentioned it at our Tuesday meeting. We did a little flyer, like a virtual affordable housing tour, and I included them because they're 100% affordable. They've got some really deep affordability as well. They have 30% units, which is for extremely low income, all the way up to 60% units, which is still considered low income. And they did use, like what was mentioned, they used the low income housing tax credit program in order to finance a good deal of it. The City of Roseville loaned them $5.76 million as well in gap funding for that program. So that's my baby, actually. I've been working on that program, or on that since 2014 when I started in development, and we were able to get it opened and begin renting out November 1 of 2018. So we're coming up on 2 years for that program, or for that project. But yeah, it's the low-income housing tax credits. They really do allow for a lot of affordable development to be developed. But typically, it is apartment communities versus the duplexes and triplexes and things like that.
Okay, we have another question from Barbara. She says, I have a question about the Placer County Housing Element Workshop that is happening next Thursday. Are all of the cities in Placer County involved in that workshop? Or how would it be different than the workshop last week?
So no, that one's specific for Placer County. And this gets back to every jurisdiction has to have its own housing element. So the Placer County housing element will cover unincorporated Placer County. So it would not cover the City of Roseville. We have our own housing element. So Placer County's housing element workshop will be to discuss Placer County's housing element and their strategies. And they have an entirely different RHNA number, the regional housing needs allocation number, telling them how many units they need to accommodate separately. So this update is happening with every jurisdiction in our region at the same time. All of them are due in May of 2021. So there are a lot of meetings happening around the region, and we are coordinating with each other. Regional planners are having conversations and meeting with each other to see what kind of feedback we're getting in different areas, and to share work where possible, so that we don't all, if somebody comes up with a really great policy on a particular housing item, then we can go ahead and share that around.
Next question, it's from Will. Do you have any affordable developments being planned or constructed currently?
Yep.
Absolutely, yes, we do. So our newest affordable complex is going in right now. It's the Main Street Plaza. It's over on Main Street and Washington Boulevard. You can't miss it when you drive by. It's about 4 stories, and it's got 65 affordable units, similar affordability to the Losi project. So they have as low as 30% units, all the way up to 60% units. And the City of Roseville Housing Authority has actually given 30 project-based vouchers to the project as well, which will really help, makes those units affordable to those in that 30% area median income, the extremely low income. 19 of those project-based vouchers are also for veterans. And there are too many overlays in financing to mention, but there are also 10 units there that are for specifically mental health. They're provided by Mental Health Services Act, MHSA. So they'll be have on-site management there, not just on-site management, but on-site supportive services for all the residents. So that's going to be a great addition to Old Town. We also have another project in Old Town that was proposed in 2015. It's called Junction Station. They're going to have workforce housing there. Unfortunately, it's been stuck in litigation for quite a number of years now. So I'm hopeful that one will move forward at some point. But that will be another 80 units there. Again, workforce housing, 20 studios and 61 bedrooms. We don't have anything else right now that's in process that I can speak about, but we have a lot of affordable obligations that are outstanding. So if you listened, I think I spoke about it last week, 10% of each specific plan is reserved for affordable housing, 40% for very low income, 40% for low income, both rental, and then 20% for middle income purchase. So during if anyone watched the presentation last week, I had a slide up that showed all the affordable units that ones we've had in the lower south section of Roseville. I think there was about 350 units that they've expired over the years because they've been, they're over 30 years old. Then we have the current affordable units that are about, it's like 1,900 units supposedly that are affordable right now. And then we have all of the units that are supposed to be built as affordable for the future. Again, they have obligations against them in the specific plan, and it's about another 1,850 units, something like that. So we do have a lot of plans for more affordable units for the future. We've been planning for the future for quite some time.
Okay, Tricia, could you just restate how many affordable units there are on the Main Street apartment project?
Yes, there are 65 affordable units on the Main Street project.
Okay. And then two more questions. Are there areas of Roseville that you are prioritizing for high density zoning?
Yeah, and so that gets back to the strategies I was talking about. I mean, if you look at the city's land use map, you'll see the darkest brown areas on that land use map. And you can find that on the city's general plan website. Those are all high density housing sites. So we usually plan, as we build specific plans or as we plan specific plans, we're looking usually to make sure that there's like 30% of the units are high density residential. You know, we're trying to split them up between low density, medium density, and high density. But with the strategies I was talking about, we do need to pick up 3,000, as much as 3,000. It could end up being lower. We're working on that. But we need to pick up as many as 3,000 additional high density residential units on land areas. And so we are looking at two categories of strategies. One that would focus more on what we call the infill areas of the city. Those are the sort of core areas of the city that were established before we even had the specific planning process, which the city started using in the 1980s. So those are the core areas of the city where mostly the land is built out, but there are some vacant parcels that haven't completed. And there are actually quite a number of parcels that are what we call underutilized, which basically means that it's like one house on a 4-acre lot or a couple of things on a 4-acre lot. You know, so there's land, there's room to redevelop that with more homes. And then other strategies that focus more on the developing areas of the city where it's vacant land, it's designated right now for either single family or high density residential. And we're looking at ways to potentially adopt strategies that increase densities in those planning areas as well. And so some of the feedback we're looking for is whether or not people would like to see us prioritize one of those strategies or group of those strategies over the others.
Okay, I think this is another question for you, Lauren, from Kim. Hi, do you know what is being built on the corner of Roseville Parkway and Gibson? Also in the vacant lot next to it, closer to Lazy Dog.
I think you might be talking about Broadstone Holden. Trisha's nodding. Trisha might actually know more than I know about that particular project. No, you remember the name. Yeah, Broadstone Holden is multifamily, but it is not assisted living, right? I think that one
it's assisted living because we can't require any affordable units from them. So yeah.
But I think it might not be specifically, well, there are different categories of things. There's assisted living, and then there's like sort of a recovery or transitional living, that kind of thing. But it's in that category of housing. So it's assisted living there. Now, the one you say that is closer to Lazy Dog, there are a bunch of parcels over there. So that's a little bit more challenging because there is one vacant parcel there that will remain vacant. And then there are a number of parcels over there that have different land use or zoning on them. That's commercial, basically, over that way. So I'm not sure which one you might be talking about. But if you want, you can send me an email with like an image or a map saying this one right here. That's the one I'm talking about. And I can get you more information.
Yeah, most of that over there, I believe, is commercial.
Yeah. So do we have any more questions right now or comments?
Just a thank you from Kim and a thank you from Will.
Well, if that covers it for everyone, we can go ahead and wrap up. What I would like to encourage y'all to do, if you haven't already, is, like I said, go ahead and go to the Housing Element Update website, look at the existing housing element. I would encourage you to focus on the programs and policies section, because there's a lot of the housing element that's demographics and other data that you're required to have in there. However, if you focus on programs and policies for now, that would be really helpful if you want to take a look at those and see if you have any recommendations for us. And also on the documents page on the Housing Element website, looking at the strategies. It definitely sounds like some of you have looked through those, so that you can potentially give us any feedback you have on those strategies and what you would like to see us prioritize, or if you have good ideas for strategies we haven't considered. Because this kind of outreach on a housing element is really, really vital to its creation. You know, the housing element is supposed to be the long-range plan for how to accommodate housing for every segment of the Roseville community for the next 8 years. So it's actually really important that we get feedback from folks on where they see our needs are. And that's why we're holding these meetings, and we're doing a bunch of other types of outreach specifically to certain service providers and other folks, because we really, really, really need to hear from you in order to build a robust and equitable housing element. So we really appreciate you taking your time to attend this noon on a Thursday and to participate in this process. And we really encourage you to continue your participation. In terms of what's happening in the future, we are working on a draft of the housing element now, taking in all this feedback we've been getting, and are looking to publish that, I'm just going to say broadly, this winter. And so we'll be publishing that preliminary or administrative draft for everyone to review. At least 2 times you'll get an opportunity. You'll have that initial draft out, so we can get some feedback on that, do some revisions, and only then sort of prepare it to go to Housing and Community Development, and also eventually to our hearing bodies. So we put it out publicly, get feedback, make revisions, and then in the spring, summer, we release it again and start talking about having public hearings. In terms of public hearings, there will be at least 2, one before the Planning Commission. They advise City Council on the action, and then at least one before City Council, and they would take action on the project. So we're targeting having it to City Council and done in the May timeframe, because that's when it's supposed to be done. That said, there is a grace period, so it could stretch into the September time frame, but this is what we're looking at right now, is a winter release of the first draft and a spring-summer release of the next draft. So thank you for your time. Are there any questions on the schedule or how to provide input? Seeing none, Tricia, did you want to offer any last words?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Lauren had to say. Looks like we did get a question in, but just really quickly, just echo the thank you for showing up at noon on a Thursday. And, you know, again, just encourage as much participation as possible. It's only going to help our process. And one other way to participate would be through flash vote. We are doing fairly regular surveys, and I think it's flashvote.com/RSVL. I think Brian's going to type it in the chat so you guys can have access to that and sign up to receive our surveys.
We did have one more comment, and it was, is that timeline online?
Some of it is, like on the Get Involved portion of the website, it tells you when we're estimating public hearings will be held. The understanding that those are estimates, as well as in the documents page, there's estimations of the timelines in a lot of the reports that have gone to City Council, as well as, and we will be taking this as an informational item, I should mention. We'll be taking this as an informational item now in November to Planning Commission, but just to tell them everything we've just explained to you, basically, just so that they're prepared for hearings at some point. So we can add that to the website if that's important. We just were cautious about adding a timeline that then we have to adjust and update periodically.
That's all I'm seeing.
Okay. All right, well, thank you everyone, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Feel free to email either Tricia or I with follow-up questions or comments, or to chat about anything you want to get more information on. Have a good day, and go ahead and sign off.